You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for our third part 3 of our Obi-Wan Kenobi Retrospective. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, for our Obi-Wan Kenobi Retrospective, my stalwart, my steadfast co-host for this series, Marty Aleman. Marty, how's it going?
Hello there. I felt like 2-3 episodes late.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Not only do we have the part 3 of Obi-Wan Kenobi to talk about tonight, but also for those who don't know, listen, E3 is not a thing anymore, but E3 used to be a thing. It used to be the Electronic Entertainment Expo. That's the E3. There's 3 E's, E3. And this is when we would get all of our video game news and all that sort of thing, and all of the big companies would do press conferences and whatnot. Now E3 is dead, but something has risen in its place called Summer Games Fest. So we are in the thick of it with Summer Games Fest, and over the course of the last couple of days, we got some first looks at a new video game from EA and Massive called Star Wars Outlaws. That was sort of the reveal, was this past weekend. And then this morning was the Ubisoft conference. Sorry, it's not EA. This one's Ubisoft. EA is the Star Wars Jedi games. So this one's Ubisoft. Yeah, this one's Ubisoft and Massive. Sorry. And the Ubisoft conference was this morning. It was a terrible conference, but some really cool games were shown off. Presentation wise, it was like a flashback to like 2010, in the way that these guys were like standing on stage.
Oh, really?
Reading off a teleprompter. It was yeah. Since the pandemic, the things have kind of shifted, right, to a lot of like pre-recorded stuff and less of like the live thing, because so the way that it used to be is that at E3 everybody would come out on stage and do these big press conferences in front of all of the media that were all gathered in one place. Now this is a holdover from before we had things like the internet and streaming, and now that we have those things, most of the communication that we get from video game studios and the major console manufacturers come in the form of sort of what's been coined as a direct, which was coined by Nintendo. And Nintendo started with this. Everybody else was still doing press conferences, and Nintendo was like, we're just going to pre-record everything because we have a bunch of non-English speaking Japanese executives that want to talk to you, and this way we don't have to have a translator. They don't talk and then a translator talks. We record them, and then for the English broadcast, we have a translator speaking over them, right? So that, I think that was their main motivation, but it changed the way that Nintendo relayed information to the press. And as a matter of fact, they basically removed the press from the situation. That's why it's called a Nintendo Direct, because it's direct to the consumer, right? So that's kind of been the shift, right? And everybody else has followed suit. Sony does their showcases, and they'll also do oh man, what are the deep dives called? I can't remember right now off the top of my head.
I don't know either.
But they'll do like a they do a thing called State of Play every so often, and they'll do the PlayStation Showcase every so often. But then they'll do, maybe it is a state of play is what they do, and they'll do ones like dedicated to certain releases right before they come out. So like right before God of War came out, they did I think they just call it a state of play. Where they'll like go deep dive into a specific game. And then Xbox, I don't know what they call theirs because I don't care about Microsoft that much, but anyways, everybody else kind of does it this way. Ubisoft came out with an old school, like in an auditorium presentation, even though like the press is not necessarily all gathered in one place right now. They were on the weekend, but not today. So it's kind of a weird, I don't know, maybe it is still going on, I don't know, but it seems like a lot of journalists have just kind of left, gone back home for the week. But they did this old school one. It was a terrible show. They were missing lighting cues all over the place. The direction was awful, and it was just like, it was so much. I love to hear from devs. Like, I love to hear their passion and what's exciting and like why they're excited about the game that they're making. But that's not what we were getting from this. What we were getting from this was just like talking heads, pre-rehearsed, overly prescriptive, like press conference jargon, right? Everybody trying to do their best Steve Jobs impersonation. And so it was painful to get through. I say all of that to say that I sat through the entire thing. Now, they opened with Avatar World of Pandora, something like that, which is like this open world Avatar game. Looks phenomenal. Can't wait. And then they showed off some new Assassin's Creed stuff, which I love the Assassin's Creed franchise. So that was interesting to see, and I'm excited to play that game. Although I don't really need to be sold on it. I like the franchise, so that was fine. They showed off the new Prince of Persia game, which looks really cool. But again, you don't need to sell me on it. The Rayman team working on Prince of Persia 2D side scroller, I'm down. Like, that's all you needed to tell me, and then show me the art style, and I'm good. But I suffered through this whole thing. All the car racing games and the Just Dance nonsense and just like all of these other things. I don't know, 3 or 4 games that are basically just guys with guns running around shooting people. I suffered through all of this to see Star Wars Outlaws, and totally worth it. This game looks incredible. Now, this is our first look at it, and it's a very like manicured and well presented look at the game. What in the industry they call a vertical slice. So everything's running as good as it's going to run in sort of like the best way possible. But because they want to put their best foot forward for obvious reasons. So we'll see what the actual game ends up like. This game is huge. It looks like multiple planets, open worlds, run around, kind of do what you do. You play as a thief, scoundrel, I sort of a fringer character. Kay. Oh, do you know her name off the top of your? Sorry,
Kay Vess.
Yeah. And her little and her little buddy Nyx, which is this little like looks like an axolotl, like a newt, the ones with like the frillies on the side of their face, but kind of a lizard dude, and the whole reason why I want to talk about this game, introduces a cohort of yours, the Chewbacca to your Han Solo, ND5, a BT commando, so like a battle droid, commando battle droid from Clone Wars.
Yeah. Yep.
Who has obviously been heavily modified, because he doesn't even have the commando voice modulator. Like, he's got his own, And he wears this incredible duster, this incredible trench coat with his blaster slung on his hip, and he's just, I don't know how else to say it. He's super sexy. Like they made him exude, like he just like, it's just like coming off of this character in waves, this like sexual attitude from this battle droid. And I love it, dude. I am all about it. The voice, the mannerism, everything about this character, because like I don't particularly care for battle droids that much. I mean, like I don't hate them, I don't love them. It's always fun
They're
when they
different.
pop up in something.
Yeah.
The Commando is like a massive improvement on the standard and the super battle droid, right? but but um but this particular one, he just like, I don't know. He's got in one of the promo shots, he's got like a case that he's sort of got, he's holding, it
That's
looks like
on
a,
the shoulder. He's got this swagger about him,
yeah, it looks like a guitar case, right? Like it basically like it's that sort of a shape, and it's got that sort of a handle on it, and he's got it like over his shoulder. And it reminds me of like it's Robert Rodriguez, right?
Oh,
El
yeah. El
Mariachi.
Mariachi.
Yeah, with Antonio Banderas, right?
Mhm. That's a good call.
Like, and look, listen, that's not an accident. That's not by mistake. They are
Mm.
clearly channeling a vibe with this dude. And I love it. I love it. The best thing is that like Kay, great character design. I I'm just gonna come out right out and say this one too. Beautiful. Like oh my god, she's beautiful, right? Like they've gone to great lengths to like portray this character, and I think like it's modeled after the actress, but I she's just like very striking, very 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 pretty, and yet this droid is pulling all of my focus. It's hilarious that
That's
I'm
aw
just like, I can't stop thinking about ND5. And like, but everything about this game that they've shown us so far, I'm just like, I can't believe that Lucasfilm Games has done this to us twice, right? Because this is basically, it's Jedi Fallen Order again. Like, and it's not a Jedi, right? This is a
right.
different sort of aspect. It's more like the underworld aspect of Star Wars, which is exciting to me. I'm excited to play as a character who's not a Jedi. But yeah, the idea of like, hey, I we got a young sexy crew of Star Wars characters busting around the galaxy, and your protagonist has a little buddy on their back, and Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor they're a little bit of a cross between a linear and an open world. They're not, I mean, like they are open world in the sense that you can go anywhere, anytime, but they're designed more in like the Metroidvania sort of genre of like, you're supposed to go here now, and you can't really go there yet because you don't have that upgrade, right? So it's a little bit more of a linear path. This game is being touted as like truly open world, which is very interesting. So go anywhere, do anything sort of attitude, and you're just going to be like pulling off heists and whatnot. It looks like from the trailer, we know that we're going to get Kajimi from Rise of Skywalker is one
Yeah,
of
it
the
was like
planets that we go to. Akiva is another one of the planets that was named. I don't know if that's been in anything before, but that's in it. Um, it looks an awful lot like Canto Bight is in the game as well.
mhm.
Based on the CG trailer, it looked a lot like Canto Bight, less so in the gameplay that we got to see. We didn't really see anything like that. Tatooine, I think, is in it as well. Looks like it's a pretty sure bet. But most exciting, I'm pretty sure that Black Spire, that Batu is in this game, because there's
Oh,
one
they
shot.
said that,
it
Sorry,
looks
yeah,
an
yeah,
awful lot
it
like
looks like
Black
Black
Spire.
Fire Outpost. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm talking over you.
No,
But
it's all
yeah,
good.
I got that same vibe too. That it looked exactly like Black Spire. The only thing that I didn't see was the actual spires, but they could be
Yeah.
hiding that. But especially the actual like marketplace, it looked directly just right out of Black Spire for sure.
Yeah, and there's one shot in the game at the towards the end of the gameplay preview that we saw where it's sort of flipping through the locations, and there's one
Right.
shot where we see, like there's the one building that's got the it's the same model ship as the second Phantom. It's the
It's the restaurant.
separatist, the sorry.
It's the restaurant building where it has the
Yeah,
basically
that's
the
I thought
low
I thought it
midway.
was the restaurant. Yeah. Yeah, so I like it pretty sure that it's that building cuz it's got that ship on the top of it, which is
Yeah.
like it would be a really weird choice to like emulate that and it not be Batu. But we've not gotten anything major in canon that takes place on Batu yet, which has been such a wasted opportunity. And so yeah, this could be really exciting if we get to actually like. Can you imagine if you're in this video game and you actually like get to walk through Batu and it's like, well, I already know where everything is. I know where the droid depot is. I know where the marketplace is because I've physically been there. It would just add so much. It was like when in Fallen Order, the lightsaber parts were modeled after the lightsabers that you can build in
Yeah,
in Black Spire, right? So, um, yeah, like it would be very cool if we can actually go to Batu and see it before the um resistance era, right before the First Order era, and see what it was like
for sure.
during the original trilogy, because the game takes place between Empire and Jedi. So yeah.
Which is so great. It's a perfect time. It's almost like this generation's Shadow of the Empire, and um, it's amazing. If it is Batu, it'd be kind of cool if we park where the Falcon is, with this new ship,
Yeah.
and go around to the bar if you can. It seems like you could play Sabak. I kind of had the feeling that was when it came to the gameplay trailer. There was a part of me that was thinking like, are we actually going to be able to play the game Sabak? And but I think they needed to carry on with the story to kind of show off as much as they could. And I think one of my favorite parts of the gameplay trailer was when she got into the ship and the ship just went out of atmosphere and into space and directly into a space battle, but it almost like it just completely emulated that this is a completely open universe game where you can just travel and go into light speed, go into the next planet, and you have full control. It's not like, and you're right, when it comes to like Jedi Survivor, you have that we call Metroid way of gaming, where you basically have a kind of a path that you have to kind of follow, and anytime you get into the ship, you kind of go into hyperspace. You have that choice, which is great, but you're not driving. You're not. So there's that difference where you actually get to pilot the ship and have that full control, which is awesome.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. Getting out into space and having some space combat is always a good time. Well, I shouldn't say always a good time, because in the Battlefront games, in the most recent Battlefront games, it's actually pretty terrible. But it has the potential to be a good time if it's a
Yeah,
little more Rogue Squadron and a little less Battlefront or Squadrons. Squadrons was a cool concept, but like in execution, not a very accessible game. Very, very difficult to play. Um,
yeah.
so
It was
yeah.
very. It was like very rushed from what I remember, but
Oh
oh,
yeah.
this one I have kind of high hopes for. I can't get a PS5 right now, but this one might be able to push me over the edge to get it because I'm kind of about a 2 to 3 year delay on games right now. I just got the Miles Morales game, so I'm a little bit behind right now. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think this one might actually push me over the edge to actually get a PS5 for once.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be worth it. I think it'll definitely be a good time. I'm excited to see more from it. But
Sure.
that's not what you guys are here for. You guys are here to listen to us talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi a year late. And so here we are. We're on part 3. And I, you know what, for me, this is this is when the series starts to really get good, right? We talked
Mm-hmm.
about it the last couple of weeks, that we talked, like, part 1 and 2 were premiered the same night. I got to see them at Star Wars Celebration back to back. But then, like, so that was like the Thursday night or whatever, right? And then I very quickly the next Wednesday we got part 3. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the one for me that, like, this is where the meat of the series starts to come in. There's like this one, and then is it the next episode, or is it part 5 that opens with the flashbacks? I'm trying to remember. I think
I know
it's
that
next
episode.
week.
Yeah, next week was when he's in the back to tank.
Yeah. So it does open. It opens with the flashbacks, right?
Yeah,
You gotta love it. Every time a character goes into a back to tank in Star Wars, they have flashbacks. Except for Luke.
that is now
They
canon.
need, yeah, yeah. They're flashback to tanks.
Did you want to
Heyo.
list the writers and director and stars of the
Yeah,
episode?
yeah. Um, yeah. So for this one is once again directed by Deborah Chow. I'm pretty sure they're all directed by Deborah Chow, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But the writers on this one, it switches up a little bit. We've got Joby Harold, so it was like story by Joby Harold, I think, for all 6 episodes. But we've got Hannah Friedman and Hossein Amini writing on this one, and then of course all of the usual suspects, as we've talked about before. This is the episode that introduces Indira Varma's character, Tala Durath. But also we get Freck, the mole man,
Mm-hmm.
voiced by Zach Braff, doing his best Seth Rogen impersonation, which
I could have sworn it was Seth Rogen when it first came out, but then it wasn't.
yeah, everybody was kind of like, well, that sounds an awful lot like Seth Rogen, but then it was like, nope, it's actually Zach Braff just doing a Seth Rogen impersonation, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And playing potentially the most disgusting character in the entirety of Star Wars, I think. Well, we'll get to that.
I can't
Um,
wait to hear your thoughts, because I know your thoughts. I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
audience knows your thoughts, but I don't think we can
absolutely.
still wait to hear them.
Let's start at the beginning, though. So we
Wait,
start
wait, wait,
on
wait,
this.
wait, wait. We got to mention Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader.
Oh, of course. Yeah, he's back as Vader.
Sorry, I had to put that in there.
Yeah. We start on this cargo ship, this unmanned droid controlled cargo ship, as Obi-Wan and Leia have escaped from a Dayu, and they don't even know where they're heading. They don't know how long it's going to take, and Obi-Wan's just trying to contact Qui-Gon. He's still trying to connect with Qui-Gon. And he's just kind of like there's a little bit of a like um like why me sort of, like I not to get too like religious with it, but there's a little bit of like the Jesus like take this cup for like sort of a little bit of the like I don't want to. I don't want to have to deal with this. Well, Anakin is still alive. Like I can't handle this. Um
For sure.
and Obi-Wan kind of questioning Qui-Gon and the Force in general, and sort of he's still in this, and I think this is intentional because I think he is still in the midst of this crisis of faith, right? Which will come back later when he is confronted by Vader, and instead of doing what he knows he's supposed to do, instead of reacting the way that he would react, when he jumps down in front of General Grievous, or is uh, spinning in the air in front of Count Dooku. He's very, very much a captive of fear at this point. So he's just sort of reacting to that. The dark side is one, right? Like that's where we're at right now, is that and this is why I love this show, right? we are right in the midpoint between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. We are also at the height of the power of the dark side, as far as I'm concerned, because it is actually Obi-Wan's actions in this series that start to turn the tide. As much as like Cal Kestis is out there and Kanan and Ezra and all that stuff, like this is the thing, is that like, no spoilers for Jedi Survivor, but that story is trending in a darker direction. Which it's hard to tell if that's sort of like like where it's going ultimately, or if that was just like the second game sort of being a little bit more of an Empire Strikes Back, and putting us on that path. But in any case, it's like very, there's a lot of hopelessness in the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games, of like there's like there are glimmers of hope, but really like underneath it there's a lot of despair, right? So like the hope is kind of like punching through, but not quite. And then obviously Rebels is later than this. Rebels is another 5 years after this, if not more, maybe 6 or 7. How old is Ezra in Star Wars Rebels? The beginning
I
of
think it
that.
was like 15, 16, some of that. So I think you're pretty right on with the
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah, that's right. It is about 5 years, right? Because then we have like a time jump and all of that. So
For sure.
um and it doesn't quite come up to Rogue One. We get close to Rogue One, but not quite up to Rogue One, which is obviously the lead into A New Hope, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's older
Um
than 17 in at the end, and he was born on Empire Day, which is basically the day that maybe a day or two older than Luke and Leia, if we're going to get that specific about it. So he was probably 16, in by the end.
yeah. I
We'll see.
think canonically we're supposed to, I've always treated it that the three of them were all born on the same day. Like
Right.
that and that likely there are others as well, right? That like it wasn't in the same way that Rey is out there, in the sequel era. Like I think that there are probably other characters as well. There are other that we haven't met yet,
Right.
that were also like darkness rises and light to meet it, and like the Force does not, it Ezra is proof that the Force didn't put all of its eggs in one basket, right? That it was like
True.
there
Yes.
there are other pathways, right? Like there are multiple ways to bringing balance to the Force. um in any case, I believe that this story, that Obi-Wan's arc in this story is the turning of the tide from darkness back towards light, towards A New Hope, right? um and by the end of it, that he's conquered that. But in at this point in the story, in the midpoint of the story, he is like deep in the dark side. Not that he is like giving into the dark side, but the dark side is like overwhelming him, right? His reactions to things are not typical to the Obi-Wan that we know from the prequel era, or even the Obi-Wan that we know from Rebels and A New Hope, right?
For sure.
Where he's much more resolved and much more stoic, even more so, I would say, than during the prequels. Um, and this story is how he goes through that transformation. We always kind of treated it that he just like sort of went into the desert and was a hermit and trained his mind and his soul and all that sort of thing. um and so that's why he sort of has the resolve that he has in A New Hope. But this series gives us a whole new perspective on that, of like, no, there was actually something that happened, right? um
Yeah. This
and
this whole story. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say this whole story is almost like the inverse of an actual character arc.
Mm,
If you want to look at it visually, a character arc is supposed to kind of grow. This is almost like a character dip, if you will, because I, for me, and you just said it, he is at his lowest here. He is
mhm.
even lower emotionally. Just he's conquered by fear, just for
Yeah,
the notion of learning that Anakin is still alive. And
Yeah.
so he was way more at peace cutting up some whale meat up on Tatooine and just watching Luke. But he is completely unhinged here, and the reactions. It was really evident this second or third time that I've watched it, and definitely the first time in the last year watching it, and how much he was just reacting. His reactions were just so over the top. And we all know that Ewan McGregor is a fantastic actor, so it's just what is behind that, and it is
Yeah.
he is unhinged. He is at his lowest here because he is the opposite of he's imbalanced right now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think Marie Claire on What the Force would refer to this as Obi-Wan is in the underworld, right? And he's sort of going through that, and he needs to come through it in order to be reborn as he is at the end of the series, right?
Right.
Um, and is a new character, so that's the journey this time around. Is not it's not it's it I mean it like the going this is a typical part of the hero's journey, but Obi-Wan is starting from, this is the thing, and Ryan Johnson talked about this a lot with The Last Jedi and with Luke, is that a hero's journey for like a an adolescent or a young person is a very different hero's journey than that of a middle-aged man, right? And so when we look at these characters, it's really interesting. There are so many of these stories right now where we do have these characters that were heroes, and then we come back and we revisit them in middle age, or even like sort of on the other side of middle age, in the instance of like Luke. And I would say another really great example is from a while ago. One of the first ones that sort of started this trend was Tron Legacy, and Kevin Flynn, that character's journey. Like we see the characters in these new incarnations, and they're actually very different from what we came to expect from their previous hero phase, right? um and Obi-Wan, I think this went over a little bit better with the audience because we have all of the puzzle pieces to know how he got this way. With Luke and with Kevin Flynn, and there are some other examples in recent pop culture, but because we keep doing these like re-sequels, right? Like where we reboot with a sequel and come back with a younger cast, but the older cast are now like the mentors and whatnot. Um,
Right.
so we keep doing these stories, and it keeps being this thing of like, well, what happened in the intervening 30 years? Well, bad stuff, right? Um, but with Obi-Wan, we were there. We saw it. We saw the bad stuff happen, and he's just been hiding for the last 10 years, right? Um, so I think it's a little bit easier to swallow because we were there for the traumatic event. Whereas with Luke, uh, we are told in the midst of experiencing this new version of the character why he is the way that he is. And so by the time we get to that, a good portion of the audience, unfortunately, is not willing to accept this, right? Like they want to fight with the story. Um,
Right.
and so, you get the opinions that you have about The Last Jedi and about Luke's journey, where it's this not my Luke and all of that sort of thing. And it's like, well, listen, he's never been your Luke. He doesn't belong to you. He doesn't belong to anybody. He is a character that is for all of us. And your personal uh, feelings really don't have anything to do with the journey of the character. And also, it's not Ryan Johnson's fault. Let's be really clear about that. Lawrence Kasdan and J.J.
Jake.
Abrams put him in this position. They were Ryan was forced to figure out, why would Luke Skywalker abandon everyone and let Han Solo die, right? And it has to be that he's cut himself off from the Force. Why would he do that? Well, they said in the last movie he failed, that Ben Solo turned to the dark side, became Kylo Ren, and his entire Jedi Order was slaughtered. Like why, how did that happen? And he has to figure that out, and that's what that is, which is very different from, we watched the prequels and we saw Obi-Wan cut Anakin's arm and legs off, and leave him to burn alive as he screamed, I love you, you were my brother, and Anakin screams back, I hate you. Like we were there, we seen it with our own eyes, and we know exactly exactly where that trauma is. And he watched Padme die as these babies were born, and made the decision to watch over Luke, right? We get it, we get it, so we know why he is so bummed. It's still not like fun to see your character in that space, but I think because we had 20 years basically to get used to the idea, and also I mean, like that character is a character that we were introduced to in A New Hope, and he had this backstory, and we get that melancholy moment of, I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father, and like all of that. I mean, like that scene has always been a very powerful scene because of Alec Guinness and his performance. But that scene now, those few lines about, he was the best star pilot in the galaxy and a good friend and all of that stuff, like the sadness in Obi-Wan's expression, which the craziest part of that, the absolutely most wild part of that, is that it was not part of the story yet. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like Vader wasn't Luke's father necessarily, right? I know that like George had ideas about what had happened, but the depth of it, and it's like, I mean, he's just reminiscing about a friend who's passed away, so obviously he's going to be melancholy, he's going to be sad about it. But now the depth of that is like infinite because of the prequels, because of the Clone Wars, and because of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because of this series. So all of that tying back into this first scene, it just so it just informs so much of the rest of Obi-Wan's journey. That's why I say, like, this is the episode where, like, for me, like, the rubber kind of hits the road and we get into what this series is actually about. Because we're at the beginning, we're introducing little Leia, we're setting the stage, we're doing all that. Here's all these Inquisitors, some adventure on Dayu and whatever. But then this one, it's like we've got this scene, and then we've got the scene in the what I refer to as like the bus ride later, where Leia and Obi-Wan sort of have a heart-to-heart. And it's like that, to me, like that's the core of the show. That's what this show was about, right? And then obviously the final moments of the battle between Vader and Obi-Wan in part 6. It's like that's what we're here for. So yeah. Anything else to say about this scene before we move on?
Just overall, just such a great scene. Specifically about the beginning, I love how he fixes Lola for Leia. Mending those bridges that could have been burned the first time that they met, and she's definitely starting to trust him. And then I love the dialogue between them regarding describing the Force, and this is what I loved about the show as well. In addition to the bus ride scene, which we'll get to, but we've never actually heard the Force spoken to, or just describe this in this way, and how if you turn off the light and when the light comes back on, that's the way it feels. It feels like it's just well done, well written, well acted, and then they go on to Mapuzo, and I wanted to start off by saying when it comes to just this opening kind of montage of the ship landing and whatnot, I know for the previous 2 episodes I was a little harsh on the score, but this is the score when they approach on Mapuzo is fantastic. Kind of reminded me of the old kind of Kevin Kiner Clone Wars days where he was very experimental. And it just kind of had that feel to me. I don't know. What'd you think about that?
Yeah, I love it because it gives us an immediate feeling of sort of it's got a little bit of like a I don't know, like a Middle
Moroccan,
Eastern,
Moroccan
yeah,
kind of feel
Moroccan,
to it.
yeah, yeah, very like Moroccan feel to it, right? So we kind of get that, yeah, like that Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, like Northern Africa, like all of that sort of area, right?
Yeah.
So it puts us in like sort of an exotic location sort of frame of mind. And also like there's something isolating about it, about the score. They're very alone and remote, which is obviously also, you know, the sort of the setting that they're in. But the music sort of plays into that a little bit in these scenes, and it makes us uneasy. I think that's the most important thing, is that like it's sort of it. This is not a heroic theme, right?
Mm,
We are not in a safe place. I think like that's the most important thing, is that like we're heading towards safety, but we're not in a safe place. And we're supposed to sort of be feeling that with Obi-Wan, right? And Leia doesn't understand how dangerous the world is because she's young and naive and still has a lot of trust. And Obi-Wan is the inverse of that and has completely lost his faith in the world, in the galaxy, um, to like to the degree that like he messes up too, right? Like he messes up by not staying like at the coordinates that they were meant to go to, and then Leia messes up by being too trusting of Freck, right? So
right.
like the both of them sort of both need to learn from each other to be a little bit more, um not the middle path, because a middle path is not a good idea, but just I they're both too far to the extreme, and they need to learn from one another to sort of ease up a little bit and be a little bit
Yeah, I would
more.
say a
Sorry,
little
go
bit
ahead.
more balanced. I would just say
Yeah.
a little bit more balanced, even though you said not too much in the middle, but they would definitely need to exude that to just to survive. I mean, Obi, just wait 5 minutes. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But as we were talking about before, right? He immediately succumbs to fear, and he's like, "I knew we shouldn't have trusted him. He's, we're out here, and this is probably a trap or whatever." Right? Like he immediately goes to the worst case scenarios,
right,
and instead of just like patience, which is what a Jedi should do, right? Is like patience, right? Like you expect them to be here exactly when we get here. That would be a little bit too convenient. But he's lost his faith in the Force, so he is. What did he say on the ship? Right, we talked about it. That like what does the Force feel like when and it's dark and you turn on a light? If you turn on the light, it feels safe. Well, Obi-Wan has not turned the light on yet, even though he just
yeah,
expressed that to Leia. He's expressed that in like a past tense, right? Not in a present tense. That's not where he is right now. He is in the darkness. He is feeling unsafe, right? And so all of his reactions in this episode are from that place of fear, and anxiety, and so he is very much not acting like the Obi-Wan Kenobi that we know, right? um
for sure.
yeah, I love that. I love that aspect of it. And like, I mean, like when he sees the apparition of Anakin, right? I mean, it's just it's that tells you everything that you need to know about where he's at. He's kind of lost his way. Kind of
Lost his
he
way.
has
He's kind of
absolutely
losing
lost
it.
his way.
Yeah, he's losing it. I mean, even in the cinematography, the way they kind of shoot it is um it's handheld. It's kind of going at a kind of Dutch angle where it's kind of tilting to the side. It's all over the place. He's almost like close to like throwing up. It almost looks like, where he's just
Hmm.
completely, like I said before, unhinged. And we're just seeing that manifest in fear and unease. So no, it's great stuff.
Yeah. So then we get to Freck, right? We get to the introduction of uh I will say a wonderful character in execution, but yeah, the worst type of character in a story, which is he is not an Imperial, and he should know better, and yet he is an Imperial sympathizer. He's a bootlicker, and he is. We'll see in a little bit. Like he delivers, like who he assumes to be, he calls it, what does he call them, strays? Uh,
Yeah,
like
found a couple
if
strays, you know.
yeah, if there's an opportunity for a little bit, not even profit, he's not even in it for money. Like that's the thing. He just wants the Empire to like him, right?
Yeah,
And so he's got his mega bumper sticker on the back of his truck, which we see as Leia and Obi-Wan get in the back.
I love that it was painted by hand too. It just shows that it's not an
Exactly.
actual like printed.
Yep.
It didn't come from the Imperial store on Mapuzo. This guy was spent some time in his garage. Like, oh man, nothing wrong with a little order. I'm gonna paint this banner.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Um, yeah, and basically, I mean, like this is. Not to put too fine a point on it, but he is basically like a Jew ratting out other Jews during the Holocaust, right?
oh,
Like that's like who's like, oh well, the Nazis will take they won't take me because I'm helping them, right? And meanwhile, the Empire is uh, stripping this planet bare and destroying it, right? And
right,
subjugating its people, and just destroying freedom. I and this guy is just like, driving these guys around and doing anything that he can to curry favor. So to me, like this is like it is one thing to be Vader and to be evil and you fall into the dark side, and you're doing bad things, but you really think that you're bringing order and peace to your galaxy, to your empire, right? And to be doing it out of like this intense trauma, and I mean, Vader is sympathetic in the sense that he was manipulated into the position, and we know that whole story, right? um Even to be one of like these recruited stormtroopers, that's one of the things that I love about this series is the way that they just paint stormtroopers. They are just regular dudes. I shouldn't say dudes because
and
there are a
that's
few female ones in this one as well, but
yeah, there was
they're just regular folks, right? Like they are just normal people. Um, and Tala says it later. It's like I joined the Empire when it stood for something, and it was too late. Once I realized what they actually were. Um, like that's a whole other thing of like these guys think that they're they just think they're serving the military, which is its own problematic kettle of fish and all that. But again, that's different than I am one of the people, because non-humans are at risk always in Star Wars during the era of the Empire, right? Like the stormtroopers are all humans, the officers are all humans. It is not a stretch. They are Nazis. They are space Nazis. They are about purity. Palpatine is about order and control. You cannot have order and control with diversity of thought and diversity of culture, race, identity, species. That all throws a wrench in his plan. So as much as there's no like specific manifesto in Star Wars of there's no what, like there's no, Palpatine doesn't have a Mein Kampf, right? Like that we know of, as that story hasn't been written yet. um other than obviously like sort of the ideologies of the Sith, right? But he doesn't share that widely with the galaxy. The rest of the galaxy doesn't realize that he's a Sith Lord. But but there is an undercurrent. There always has been an undercurrent in Star Wars since the original trilogy that, well, these guys are clearly racist. I mean, like in the original trilogy, even they're just all white men, right? Like there's not even any people of color in there, and that has changed over the years. But in that original incarnation, it was absolutely just a bunch of white guys with British accents, right? This
Right.
homogenous group. And so for a character like Freck, who is very obviously subjugated, just like everybody else, and has no opportunity for advancement, to the extent that they won't give him an Imperial bumper sticker, he's got to make his own, right?
Yeah.
um so yeah, like this is, that's where I go back to that analogy of like, you know, he is one of the subjugated, subjugated, it's not even the right word for it, like he is one of the targeted groups, but he is saving his own skin by offering up sacrifices, basically, right, in order to survive. And now, like, it is a survival tactic, but he also seems to revel in it a little bit. Like we get a very clear indication that he is happy to serve the Empire in this capacity. um
Yeah.
and he enjoys his position with these stormtroopers, and how they I wouldn't say that they respect him, but they absolutely, like, they give him a pass, right? And yeah, I mean, like, this is the sort of thing that happened during World War II, and to me, it's like those individuals were uh, amongst the worst perpetrators of you know, the uh, genocide, crimes against humanity, take your pick, that
Right.
were occurring in that time. And so that's like, that's what's going on here, right? Is it's like when you find out that a person of color voted for Trump, right? And it's like, hey, here's the thing, guys, if you're listening to this, and the things that I'm saying are upsetting you, this isn't the podcast for you. I'm sorry. There are lots of podcasts by insecure white men out there that you can go and you can listen to. Star Wars podcasts specifically, and I don't even need to point you in their direction. For some reason, they have like millions of followers and that sort of thing. But this ain't that place. This isn't that place. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like when you find out that a person of color voted for Trump, and you're like, you realize that, like, the things that
The bad
he's
guys.
doing, like, yeah, like, yeah, yeah.
Are we the
What?
bad guys? No.
Are we the bad guy?
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. It reminds me, to kind of even broaden that analogy a little bit. This character Freck kind of reminded me of Samuel L. Jackson's character Stephen in Django Unchained, who, to
Mm,
me, of all the atrocities that happened in that movie by, like Leo DiCaprio's hand, Calvin Candy or some, I believe that was his name. Samuel L. Jackson's the worst character in that entire
yeah.
movie because of all the same reasons you just said, because he is a black man that is above the slaves on that plantation, and is just the evil from that man, because he thinks that he is he thinks that he's above them, even though he is part of them. It's despicable, and that
Yeah.
is what Freck is. Basically, he is this disgusting creature, and he's just a coward, a complete and utter coward, where he'll give these guys, the stormtroopers, I mean, a ride to save him a few minutes of walking, just to make sure that he's on their side in his view. And the first thing that the I don't know about you, but like the line that really like stuck out to me, when she says like, "Oh, we love the Empire," whatnot, and when he says, It's nice to meet like-minded folks. It's like, how many times have we heard that in our everyday life? It's just like that line was just written specifically for this moment in regards to what we've been dealing with over the last few years. So no, it's just a well done character in this, in this space fantasy. Sometimes we get a little bit more truth in our fiction.
Yeah, I love it, and one of the things that I always kind of take a little bit of joy in is when it triggers those insecure man babies, and they out themselves, they tell on themselves when scenes like this happen, and it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't like this scene, and it's like, really, what didn't you like about this? What didn't you what was it, right? And they can't tell you, they just go, Obi-Wan Kenobi show not very good. So what's your problem with it? It's a bad show. You're like, well, what don't you like? I don't like the third episode is really bad.
It's slow.
You're like,
They just talk
yeah,
for some reason.
yeah, and it's like, and they will say anything but the truth, and they will not answer the question, and then you're like, okay, cool, good, this, so I know to just block you, on Twitter or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, I like it when people tell on themselves without realizing that that's what they're doing, but um the most important part of this whole sequence is after the stormtroopers get off, and like there's the whole thing of like, oh, he calls her Leia by accident instead of Luma, and uh kind of covers and goes, oh, that was her mother's name. Sometimes when I look at her, I see her mother's face. And then Leia afterwards is like, you knew her, didn't you? You knew my mother. It's like, are you my real father? And I this is one of my favorite lines in the whole series,
Mm.
and where he's just like, I wish I could say that I was, like, because it
Yeah.
would be, because for him, he's like, as painful as that would be in this moment for her to hear, and for him to like confess, and like if that were the reality, it would be a kindness compared to the truth of the situation. And Obi-Wan at this point doesn't even have the full breadth of that yet, right? Maybe he's heard of Vader in some capacity in passing, but has like sort of gone like, well, um that can't be Anakin, right? Like, because I killed Anakin, so there must be a different, like, Palpatine must have taken a different apprentice, a different Vader, if he even knows about Vader, but he doesn't seem to, right?
No. Yeah.
Um, but he really does. It's not until the end of this episode that he gets like the full scope of how far Anakin has fallen and what he's become. I so even at this point, he's just like, just just what he knows. I mean, I suppose slaughtering younglings was enough, right? But
A little bit.
the brutality of what Vader does in the settlement on Mapuzo is like, well, we'll get there, but yeah, there's so much about this series. This is why we had to come back and do this, right? This is why a year later it was like, I gotta talk about this. Um, so, Crystal is calling me, uh, and her phone number, her phone is the only thing that rings on my phone. Her number,
Mm.
so
Okay.
even though my phone's on silent, her number still comes through. Um, anyways, I this is like,
You
this
need
was why we needed to come back to this, because I just feel like the show did not get enough credit for um for the way that it executed this story, and uh for what it accomplished, um in terms of like really showing us, this relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and what it what they lost, right? Really sort of like in reinforcing that, as much as we knew it from the prequels and the original trilogy, like this series just really, like, it really explores that, the loss of that relationship, and the loss of the like the loss of Anakin, like the death of Anakin Skywalker, and what that means. It makes that stuff about like Vader betrayed and murdered your father, like that, what then gets later justified as what I told you was true from a certain point of view. The way that it reframes that, and it's like, is not Obi-Wan's point of view. That's not what he was talking about, which is how we always interpreted that until we got this. He was talking about Anakin's point of view, right? And how
Right.
far Anakin had fallen, how far Vader was from the man of Anakin, and how Obi-Wan could look at that and go, he's gone, right? And just not justify it, because I don't think that it ever needed to be justified, but to explain to us, the audience, where Obi-Wan and Yoda are coming from when they're like, you have to destroy Vader and the Emperor. That's what you have to do, right?
Right.
And they're responding that way because they are traumatized, even still, even after the resolve, even after Obi-Wan goes through his journey. There is still a trauma response there of like, the only way to save the galaxy is to kill them, right? Which we know that's not the lesson in Star Wars, right? We know that Chris Terrio doesn't, but those
No, he
of us
does
who've
not.
actually watched Return of the Jedi understand that that's not how you win. I don't know. It's if only there was a line of dialogue in one of these Star Wars movies that really just kind of sums up the whole idea that like fighting hate with hate instead of overcoming it with love. If only there were a character, an underrated character that everybody overlooks and that got almost written out of the third movie. If only she had specifically said exactly what I'm talking about immediately before. I mean, like, almost, wouldn't it have been amazing if it was almost like the last thing that gets said in the movie prior to the one that completely messes it all up? Anyways, man, it just drives me nuts. It drives me nuts, Marty. You understand this?
Well,
It just
yeah, we'll talk about Rise of Skywalker eventually, man. It'll
but it's
happen.
all like it's all so interconnected, right? Like it's all so
It really is.
interwoven. And
Yeah.
that's where Rise of Skywalker, and like we need this new Jedi Order movie to fix it, right?
Yes.
We need it to fix the state of things, because we're currently left with this frayed edge of an ending to the story. If that's the farthest in the future. I mean, technically it's not, because we do have the holiday special which takes place, and the summer vacation one. No, summer vacation. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
they're
summer
all
vacation one's afterwards as
and
well, right? Yeah.
and the Halloween one, and
Yeah.
no, and man, the way you just said it, frayed. I cannot agree more. Just the way you illustrated it perfectly. It is a frayed end to this
Yeah.
tightly woven rope, and we just need to add to it.
But this is
Um,
the great thing about Star Wars and the methodology of Star Wars storytelling. It's fine if you didn't like something, because eventually there will be another story that comes along and integrates aspects of that story that you didn't like and turns it into one of your favorite parts of Star Wars, right? Like the way that all of that stuff, cloning, dark magic,
Magic,
whatever it is, Sith sorcery, whatever thing that the Hobbit
secret
says.
only the Sith knew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
secrets only the Sith knew. The way that all of that is the backdrop for what's going on in Bad Batch, and it's like Bad Batch is phenomenal, right? Like Bad Batch is incredible, such a great
right.
Star Wars story. I mean, like, it's got its dips, but it's an animated series and it's got a lot of episodes. It's gonna have its dips, but overall, such a great story. And it that story would not be what it is, all this stuff of like the cloning and all this stuff that's going on,
Mandalorian too.
and yeah, and then the tie-in to Mando, the tie-ins to all of these other stories that are all like it's just throughout this era of Star Wars, from the time of Revenge of the Sith all the way up until The Force Awakens, right? It's just like everything is peppered with this stuff about Palpatine trying to resurrect himself, and it's made these other stories so much more interesting, to the point where we're like, spoilers for the end of Mando season 3 if you haven't watched it yet, but we're like, is he really dead, or was that a clone? Right? Like I don't trust that Giancarlo's not coming back, right? Like in some capacity.
Gate, right? Mustache
Yeah.
Gate.
Exactly. So like as much as I'll rip on Rise of Skywalker specifically, for being just a total mishandling of that story, I mean, like, I really hope that it's setting the stage for something. Listen, the stuff that some people consider inconsistencies in the original trilogy, that George Lucas had to sort of like, well, I mean, Lawrence Kasdan really had to like write around and explain away to us, of like, well, from a certain point of view, that gives rise to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, right? Like,
Sure.
without that, we don't get this. So I don't know. I was just kind of trying to keep it into perspective, but at the same time, it's just so astounding to me how like so much of Star Wars can clearly state its thesis, and yet, like, arguably the most important film in the entire saga just completely misses the point. Just completely misses the point, and she just does a Kamehameha and Dragon Balls the Emperor into bits. Like, it
I
just
still don't understand how that happens. I still don't understand how that works. I really, because where did that come from? Where did that power come from? It
yeah.
wasn't too much. Apparently, it was because she almost died for reasons, and then Ben had to, resurrect her for reasons. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just they started at the end, like Palpatine has to be gone and Ben Solo has to die, and then they wrote it backwards from there and just came up with contrivances. And it's like, we're just gonna put two lightsabers together in an X. Well, she doesn't have two lightsabers, she has one. Okay, well, one of them is Leia's. Well, then Leia trained as a Jedi, right? Like, you can see how they worked backwards to get the
yeah.
story for that movie. And they're like, well, how do they get to the Death Star? How do they find out that it's in the throne room on the Death Star? I don't know. Maybe there could just be like something that tells them. How about a dagger? How about a dagger that when you hold it up to the silhouette of the thing, it points at the throne room? I don't know. Why wouldn't
They
you
were
just be
watching
like,
movies in the
the
background while
last
that.
place the Emperor had his Sith holocron was in his throne room on the second Death Star? Like, it would have been really, really easy to write. We're way off track, but it's okay. It would have been really, really, really easy to write this part of the story, right? How do we find out? How do we get to Exegol? We need a Sith Wayfinder. How do we find a Sith Wayfinder? Well, there were only two. Kylo Ren has one, the other, which was Vader's, and somehow we know that, right? Like, if they had known that he got it on Mustafar, that was Vader's Sith Wayfinder. There are only two, Master and Apprentice, right? That's why there's two Sith Wayfinders. Makes a lot of sense. Could have said it in the movie, would have been fine. Actually tell us that that's Mustafar at the beginning. Would have been really cool if that was actually in Vader's castle, a location that we established in Rogue One, reinforced in multiple other stories, has a Lego set, and is in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. It's in this episode, right? Like, Vader's castle is obviously, there's a whole comic book series of Tales from Vader's Castle. Like, there's the whole thing. They cut it out of that movie for some reason. I don't understand it. And he just opens a thing in the middle of a field. It makes no sense. But anyways, he has Vader's. Palpatine had the other one, and Palpatine always kept it with him, right? Like, it's really easy to write that, of like how do we know that? Well, then we have to come up with a reason for why we know, how we can know that Palpatine always had his Sith Wayfinder with him. That's part of the adventure. That's part of the mystery. Well, where was the last place that Palpatine was? His throne room. Well, unfortunately, the Death Star was blown up. Well, actually, I heard that there are chunks of it on this moon, or like on this other planet, right? And then they go to Kefir and they find it. It's so easy to write it, and instead they're like, oh no, they go to a different desert planet that's not Tatooine or Jakku. okay. There's a big party there. Okay, fine. It doesn't affect the story at all, other than beads, and then he knows where she is. And then quicksand, big snake, dagger, right? Like it's just it. Although the snake is my favorite scene in that movie, but yeah, man, just just so absurd, so obnoxious. Rise of Skywalker. But Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the antithesis of that, the opposite of that, because all this series does is uh is actually like fill in gaps, right? And it starts on a premise of like Obi-Wan and Anakin are gonna fight. Obi-Wan and Vader are gonna fight again. It's like, but that's that. But when last I saw you, I was but the learner. Now I'm the master. But that's what he said. And now you're saying that there was another fight in between there. That's that you're breaking the canon. And it's like, yeah, but listen, here's the story, and then we go through it, and we get this scene with Leia and Obi-Wan, and like I knew your mother sort of thing, which is then going to culminate at the end of the series in the speech that he gives to her, which is like, I'm sorry, if your eyes are dry at the end of that scene, I don't know if you like Star Wars that much. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
what truer litmus test of like, and again, I always sound gatekeepy when I'm saying this, but it's just because like I feel like there are these people that like laser swords and stormtroopers, right? They don't like Star Wars because Star Wars isn't about laser swords and stormtroopers. It's not about Darth Vader or Star Destroyers or X-Wings. Those are all window dressing. Star Wars is about like obviously good versus evil, right? In a broader sense, but to me, Star Wars is about like individual responsibility and social justice and ultimately like doing the right thing, being a better person, right? That's what we get to the end of Return of the Jedi, and that's what that story is about, right? Is no, I won't do it. I won't kill my father. Like I'm a Jedi like my father before me. You failed, right? Like that's what Star Wars is about. That's Star Wars. That right there is Star Wars. And it comes across in a million different ways in all of these different stories because that is no different than like that moment Luke throwing down his lightsaber and saying I won't do it. I won't kill my father. You failed. Is exactly the same as Han walking in to Dryden Voss's office with the fake coaxium that's the real coaxium that's all part of like a ruse because the whole thing is just to get the coaxium back to Enfys Nest, right?
Right.
Like he is putting himself at great personal risk to do the right thing and get everybody out of this situation because that's what Star Wars is about. It's about like doing the moral correct thing in the face of darkness, in the face of overwhelming darkness, and like when the odds are against you, still saying you failed, your highness, and throwing down your weapon, right? Like that's what Star Wars is about. And then there are people who will say that like Star Wars isn't Star Wars if it doesn't have a Darth Vader or something of the sort, right? Like they people completely missing the point, just absolutely missing the point. And that scene that I'm alluding to at the end of the series is like Obi-Wan giving up everything, like including his own like personal torment, is like that's what it's about, like to tell her, like because it's painful for him to think about. It's painful for him to think about Padme and Anakin. I'm having a hard time like sort of putting this into words, but like it's a difficult thing for him to do, and there's like an aspect of like self-sacrifice for him to tell Leia the things that he tells her at the end. And this scene is what like sets that up, right?
For sure.
But yeah, it's I I don't know. I've kind of lost my train of thought here. We can move on to the next scene, but
No,
basically, you go ahead. You go ahead and talk.
no, it's great. It's a, I mean, it's a fantastic scene where she just, I think this is uh Vivian Lair, how do you, Lyra Blair, right?
Yeah.
Vivian Lyra Blair, yeah. I think this is her best scene in the entire series. Just her delivery of "Are you my father?" Just gets me every time. I don't know if it's
Hmm.
the dad in me or what, but it's just it hurts so good when she says it.
Hmm.
And then the just just on a performance level of these actors. I mean, you have Vivian, you have Ewan, and it's just the two of them with the wind in their hair, and we get that moment where he's reminiscing about the possibility of his family. There may have been a baby, and it could have been a brother, maybe. I don't really remember him. Like, it's just quintessential just Star Wars. It's one of my favorite scenes probably in all of Star Wars now, just this little moment. And and it pays off in the final episode of this series. But this just moment, it's the only real light that we see in Kenobi in this episode, where we've talked in length that this was where he's at his lowest, where he's,
Hmm.
and we're just dealing with what Obi-Wan's past, and how he is reminiscing about Padme and Anakin, and how even though we've seen him at his lowest here, I think this is the only time in this episode that we actually see a hint of the light. And even though it's painful for him to reminisce, you can almost see kind of how therapeutic it is for him to kind of relive these memories, and kind of tell her this story of who she doesn't know who her parents are. It really got to me again as a dad. It really gets to me, and I just got to respect these actors. And in this moment, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. Like I say, like this is the core of the whole show for me. So, um, yeah, so from there, they get to the checkpoint. The one dude gets cut in half by the laser gate, and it was all kind of inconsequential,
I call that
because
a Deborah Chow special though, because she just loves to kill stormtroopers, and like, come on, dude, like that's
yeah.
got to be one of the more memorable stormtrooper deaths in recent
Oh,
memory.
it's I think it's the most brutal death in the live action for any stormtrooper. I because yeah, I mean, like, I don't, because we never see, um I don't think we've ever seen like a lightsaber go through a stormtrooper in like actually like in one of these shows. But this is
No,
the closest that we ever gotten, and it's their own laser gate, right? Like, it just cuts that dude right in half. Um,
yeah,
it's
there's
brutal. It's
it's
brutal.
brutal. Yeah, there's I mean, I think the closest we ever get to something like that is maybe with Finn and the lightsaber in Force Awakens. But what I love the visual irony too, because
Yeah,
he's able, Ewan, I keep saying Ewan, when Kenobi shoots out the gate, not 20 seconds later,
yeah,
that very lethal gate just disappears, and it's just a steaming pile of stormtrooper on the ground.
yeah,
It's again the visual
yeah.
poetry of just like that thing that doesn't exist now, existed just a second ago, and causes stormtrooper to get cut in half. Is just fascinating to me.
the the one thing that I'll never get over with this scene though is he goes up to the gate and he's like, "Oh, how am I gonna turn this off?" And he goes to do the thing. And you think like, "Oh, well, because they're gonna get back in the truck and they're gonna take the truck. They're obviously not gonna walk the rest of the way, right? They're gonna
Right.
take the truck. That's why he needs to turn off the gate. He shoots the thing and then starts walking through the gate, and it's like, Ben, you could have just walked around the side. You could. It's not. It's only like 4 feet high, and it doesn't go all the way up against the side of that ridge. Like, you could have just walked around it. You didn't need to do that.
True.
But
It's true.
anyways, that's just me being silly.
And I
I
will take this opportunity to say that Freck deserved a death, or he just got knocked out by Obi-Wan. I don't know. He deserved a little bit more for me. I think.
He deserved it, but he didn't get it, and I think that that's also important. I think that's
That's
very
the
Star
Jedi
Wars.
way. Yes, that's the
Yeah,
Jedi way.
yeah. So I am like basically right after this, we're introduced to Tala. An Imperial transport rolls up with a bunch more stormtroopers who get out and are ready to do their thing. When she just shoots them in the back, and absolutely blows her cover, theoretically, right? But I she's there to help them. She's like, I came and you guys were gone, and Obi-Wan was like, we didn't think anybody was coming, and it's like, well, you didn't wait very long. Um, but now we're linked up with our contact, and she's gonna get them off world, so they just got to get back to the outpost, and then it'll all be fine.
Yeah, it's gonna go
We
very smoothly soon.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about it, but meanwhile, while all of this is happening, I Riva has had a one-on-one with Vader, which is always a dangerous choice. Um, most people don't most people don't make it out of their quarterly evaluation with Vader intact. But she has a one-on-one FaceTime with him, and he's like, okay, well, yeah, go find Obi-Wan, and they send out the probes or whatever, and meanwhile, alternate universe Han Solo. Did you know that that's his name in Fast and Furious? Sun Kang. His
Oh yeah,
his his
absolutely.
character's full name is Han Solo, but it's
Yeah,
Seoul like Korea. Uh,
Korea Soul. Yeah,
yeah,
and
I love
I think
that.
it was also what's his name, Justin Lin. He also there was a short film with Han. I was gonna call him with Sun Kang, and
Yeah,
but the character's name was Han, and they retroactively put that in the Fast and Furious universe, which I thought was pretty cool.
yeah.
Um,
They even this is so funny. This is such a tangent. I
yeah,
in Fast Five, I think it is. Yeah, because it's when Gal says something about him. I being a smoker or whatever, like because that's why he's always eating
Fast Five.
chips.
Yeah,
Because in Tokyo Drift, he's always eating snacks, and it's just like a character thing. But in I think it's is it Better Luck Tomorrow? I think that's the name of the short. He's a chain smoker, so they like in retconning it and saying that that was part of the fast, like that was like retroactively added into the canon of the character for Han in Fast and Furious. They justify, like they connected the two things with being like, yeah, he quit smoking, but since he quit smoking now, he just like he's always constantly eating chips because it's like to deal with like the oral fixation sort of thing and the addictive tendency
could,
or whatever. And I love it. It's so good. Fast
could
and
you
Furious movies, fantastic.
could
They're
you
like
imagine
bad
if
Star Wars movies. Uh,
totally? Could you imagine though if Riva comes into their inquisitorious boardroom and the brothers just chomping on some chips, some
yeah,
space chips,
missed opportunity, missed
missed
opportunity.
opportunity.
But the great thing is that he's the fifth brother, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as we know, still kicking. Never
Oh yeah.
has not died on screen.
Oh
Um,
no, no. I mean, I mean, if we're talking about Rebels, spoiler alert, Malachor. He was
does he
one of
die on
the.
Malachor? He's on Malachor.
He's on Malachor with
Oh,
Sarah Michelle Gellar, and
I don't remember him being there. Okay. Obviously, I need to rewatch Rebels, but I thought it was
yeah,
there was three of them
there's
on
three. Yeah,
Malachor because I thought it was the seventh sister and then the we talked about last week,
yeah. So
um,
he, so it's
the eighth brother.
the eighth brother. Yeah. So then the fifth brother and the seventh sister are the villains of season two. It
Yeah,
culminates in obviously Malachor, but then in those final two episodes, that's when the eighth brother comes in, and the last time we see that one is when he helicopters away and fails, and
yeah,
may have landed safely, may have not have. I mean, Darth Maul survived it, but But yeah, he does get taken out. The fifth brother does get taken out by Maul.
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember that because I like, yeah. Fifth brother ultimately perished at the hands of the former Sith Lord Maul on Malachor. You're right. You're right. Oh well.
Hey man,
There's still
if
opportunities
Han,
for us to tell other stories with him where he eats snacks.
I was gonna say, I mean, if Han could, survive Tokyo Drift, and they retroactively kept him alive to push that moment on, and then still brought him back, fifth brother could come back.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. They went to such lengths of like, well,
So
no, these are prequels to Tokyo Drift. And it's like, really? Because everybody's got smartphones and
dude,
like, because what is it? Like Fast 7 is the last one before he leaves, right? And
it's yeah, Furious Sevens when they merge, and
yeah,
yeah, Tokyo
yeah.
Drift, they have flip phones.
Yeah, and Tokyo Drift, everybody's got flip phones. But this is the thing. They do also, this is where it works for me. I don't know why we're talking about Fast and the Furious so much, other than the fact that Sun Kang is in both. But um if you remember in Tokyo Drift, they're like live streaming the race.
Yeah,
Everybody's like live, like somehow all of their phones are interconnected, and there's like a live feed of the race in like high def from everybody's flip phones. Which, like, I don't know if everybody remembers the quality of the photos that were taken on those flip phones. They were not great. It was like 1 pixel. There wasn't even a megapixel in
yeah,
those. Nowadays our cameras are like 4K on our phones, and it's like back then it was like, yeah, you can't print the pictures that you took on your phone. It doesn't work, and they're not high enough quality. But somehow in Tokyo Drift at that time, which would have taken place in like what, in like 2005 or 6, I think.
yeah.
Maybe a little later than that, but everybody's,
I think you're right. It was 06.
yeah, everybody's flip phones somehow had like high def cameras that could also stream to the internet on an infrastructure that did not exist. But they were in Tokyo, and
I was
everybody
gonna
knows that
say,
Japan's in the future. So,
it's Tokyo, yeah.
but it turns out that it's actually Tokyo in like 2015 or something. Like,
Ridiculous. And then
time,
yeah,
timeline makes no sense. And then they just brought him back to life anyways in 9. So I love it. And they do it with no explanation. It's
dude,
like, hey, how did he survive that? He was never in the car. Wait, what?
but he was. So yeah, this will be the end of this conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
we should do a Fast and Furious podcast after this. But
Oh, we should. Yeah.
dude, but I finally saw Fast 9 just a couple weeks ago. And because I heard a lot of like I mean, yeah, they're fun movies, and I enjoy them thoroughly. But I remember hearing that Fast 9 was just still pretty rough. So like, I'll wait till the next one to kind of gear up for it. Finally watched it, and I was waiting for the explanation for so long,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
man, it was just like, oh yeah, I mean, a hologram of Han would have made more sense than what happened. They were just like, oh yeah, he's off in the corner in the alley. But was he? Like, was it a clone? Was it
Yeah.
Sith magic? What was
Here,
it?
here,
Secrets only the
here,
Sith knew.
yeah. Here's the craziest thing. Hobbs and Shaw, which came out between 8 and 9,
Yes.
established that a person who gets shot in the head can survive with this procedure that they use to make Idris Elba, as he calls himself, Black Superman, right? Like, that's the explanation in that movie, is that he was dead, but then they like used all of this tech and basically super soldier serum to
Yeah.
bring him back to life. And I was like, I walked out of that movie. I remember because I saw that movie with my brother, and I walked out of that movie, and we knew that Han. I don't know if we did know that Han was coming back yet. No, we didn't know that Han was coming back yet. But I turned to, I was like, because I thought that Han would come back in Hobbs and Shaw, because Shaw is obviously like the one who killed him and all
Right.
that. So I was like, we're gonna find out in the next one that that Han's not dead, but he's a bad guy now. Like, they're gonna make him a bad guy, and he's gonna be the bad guy in Hobbs and Shaw too. And then it turns out that The Rock and Jason Statham don't get along, so they're not going to make a Hobbs and Shaw too. But now it turns out that I guess they're just going to make a Hobbs. He's just Hobbs in the next one. But I don't know.
Did you hear beef about Statham and The Rock? Because I didn't know about that. I knew
Yeah,
about Diesel and The Rock,
it's
but
so we know that Statham and Vin Diesel can't be in the same room. But I apparently, yeah, like that extends to The Rock. So like the three of them cannot be on screen together because like they can't stand each other. But yeah, anyways, back to Obi-Wan Kenobi.
so T'Challa as a brand new character.
Yeah, so Tala shows up. One of my favorite new characters in recent years. Um she takes them back, and I don't know, there's a lot that happens here, but they get into the safe house. We get introduced to Ned B, who is an adorable although gigantic loader droid that can't talk.
What if he has
We get
something
the
to say?
great line, actions speak louder than words,
There you go.
which is fantastic, really great foreshadowing. um and we find out about the path. This is when we first find out about the path, which has now come up in other stories, which is exciting.
Yeah,
um
the name drop with it's one thing to have, Clone Wars, James Arnold Taylor say, like have these interactions with certain characters like Quinlan Voss, but there's something about having the Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan say Quinlan the way he does, and it's
yep.
just magical. And yeah, I cannot wait to see a Quinlan Voss in live action, because it's got to happen, man. It really does. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of Fast and Furious, right? We
yep.
talked about it last week.
Um,
Yeah, man. I like, I would love to see Quinlan in live action alongside Ewan. It would be great. It would be fantastic. But in anything, I mean, like they've dropped this here, and then having Coran Horn also um implicated here, because his name is etched on the wall. That's how we found out that that kid from the previous episode was Coran Horn.
mm,
I mean, like, if that does not come back either in the Mandoverse or in uh New Jedi Order, what a waste. What a waste. And here's the thing. Corin Horn is one of my favorite EU characters. Actually, like, I think potentially he is my favorite EU character. I love yeah, like I just love the journey of the character of, like, he's a Jedi, but he's also like a pilot, like X-wing pilot. Like there's so much going on there, and then all the stuff that happens during New Jedi Order, the book series, with him and the Athorian homeworld and all of that stuff. He's got a really great arc over the course of that, and the New Jedi Order is kind of, I don't know. I think it's divisive. I don't know. I don't know if it really matters these days, but um, I like the New Jedi Order in theory, but in practice, maybe not as much. I haven't read all of the books, but because some of them I just couldn't get through. But I yeah, the ones where he was a central character were always ones that I enjoyed. He was always a character that I really loved. So I I really want him to show up. Now he would be a significantly older character if he were to show up in New Jedi Order, because we're talking about 45 years after Return of the Jedi, and at this point we see him. He's like, what would you say he was? He was like a 10-year-old, right? Like,
uh, 7, 8. I don't know.
maybe a little bit younger,
10.
maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're still 9 years away from A New Hope. So let's say that he's close to Luke's age. So, like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess he's gonna be pretty old by New Jedi Order. So I guess he would, if he's gonna show up, we want him to show up in the Mandoverse stuff. Um,
Yeah, the heir to the empire, and
Yeah.
um,
But honestly, that would also make the most sense because um there is a potential that at some point we're gonna get a culmination of the stories in New Jedi Order. Sorry, in Jedi Fallen Order and Star Wars Rebels, Ahsoka, Mando, sort of like all coming together in
right.
theory. Um, because I mean, I guess this is kind of spoilers for Jedi Survivor for those who haven't played it yet. So if you want to, I won't get deep into it,
Yeah, because I
but the
can't.
path, so, yeah, the path does come up, right? So, um, I like it is kind of a part of the story.
I mean, that makes
Um,
sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, like right, it has to now that it exists because of Obi-Wan. It has to if you're going to play with those characters and at that time period, you kind of have to do it. So that's a part of it. Um, you have to imagine that Ahsoka is a part of it at some point, right? And that we'll find out now that every other story with Ahsoka that we've gotten prior to this, the path wasn't a thing yet. So now that the path is a thing, the next time that we see Ahsoka in her series later this year, theoretically, we'll find out if she had anything to do with it. I imagine that she did. And so wherever Koran Horn ended up, hopefully it's all kind of connected. And it's the same place. Fingers crossed Cal Kestis ends up, and we'll need to find out in a third game if he survives that long. But uh, yeah, Cal, Ezra, Ahsoka, basically like everybody who's left, right? Like all of these wandering Jedi that have no home. Hopefully, we discover that there is a place um, where the Jedi Order sort of persists a little bit, and then we connect that into New Jedi Order. Like that to me feels like a very natural way to do it. But
I mean, we also
uh,
have with Star Wars Outlaws. I mean, that character named Jalen looks an awful lot like Kyle Katarn. So that's another one could
yeah,
be have some
yeah,
potential.
everybody is saying that, right? So
I mean, yeah,
I
you put a shoulder pauldron on a character that has a goatee, and it's like, oh, could be Kyle Katarn.
yeah, yeah. That's some of that might be wishful thinking, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's like
um,
my Star Killer being in Ahsoka as the
yeah,
Inquisitor. That's my wishful fulfillment. It's not going to happen, but hey, if it does, you heard it here first.
yeah, totally. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't, I don't think that Starkiller is showing
It's
up in
not going to
anything,
happen.
but
Again, I
uh,
could wish, but
yeah,
I just want to see Sam. It all comes down to I just want to see Sam Witwer in live action Star Wars. Um,
I, I do
that's
too. I do too. I say give him a new character, right? Like I'd say give
yeah,
him a new character, or just let him play Darth Maul. But
that's
because I think that if you wanted to do some live action with Maul, um, that takes place after Solo, uh, that you're fine to. In fact, like in the timeline, the way that Maul looks. Well, no, I guess not because he hasn't lost control of the syndicates yet, right? So when we don't have that story, if it like because when we see him in Rebels, he's lost control of the syndicates and he's just in
right.
hiding on Dathomir, right?
Old
Um,
master.
yeah, I think that like visually that Sam Witwer is a better fit for that version of Maul, anyways, because he's a lot more. He's like very gaunt and kind of, and then part of that's just the Star Wars Rebels art style, but I do think that there was an intentional uh uh like design there were design choices to make him look a little bit less fit than he had been in the past, that he was sort of like, yeah, I mean he's older, that's a part of it, right? So like I don't know, um Marie Claire has a theory that we'll see Maul again at some point uh in relation to Ahsoka, because the two of them represent the the light and the dark, right? So
The
she's the
discarded light
Ashlyn,
in the
he's
dark, right?
the Bogan, right? Like
Right.
the dark side, the brother and the sister, right? Um and I so as much as he's dead physically, he potentially persists in connection with Ahsoka, and that we could see him again in the Ahsoka series. I would love to see it, and if that were the case, I would love to see Sam Witwer playing that character. But it's highly doubtful. That's such wild fan speculation.
Oh yeah,
There's
completely.
nothing we've got nothing to indicate that.
No.
But it would be cool to see nothing other than uh, mythological story that is, I think, in a lot of instances unintentional, but that is there. It's 100% there. It's 100% in the story, right? But the thing is that Maul also can't die because he's Sisyphus. So like as much as like Obi-Wan kills him, it's like somehow he has to persist. But that's being very literal with the fact that he's Sisyphus. Um, but yeah, anyways, man, we cannot stay on track, and we're like an hour and 45 into this. So
We haven't even
what
talked about Vader yet.
I know, like Vader hasn't even shown up. So they're
Well,
in this
he
thing.
technically,
We're
he's
there,
technically,
right?
yeah. I mean, when he started the episode too, and we kind of mentioned it before, but like Vader has officially returned, and the design of Vader, we've never seen this much detail of Anakin within Vader, in the suit, where the actual chest plate comes in and inside the chest. There's little divots like along his spine. It looks like it's just the design overall, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
The return of Vader's castle, the fact that Vader, I mean, we could kind of speculate that he did, but Vader's got a throne, you guys. He's got a throne. He's got a throne
Mhm.
room. Vader has a throne. That's something that did not exist before this show. So like, it's fantastic. I just love this stuff, and I may come off as like a Vader fanboy, and I've always believed in the light and Obi-Wan and whatnot, but there's got to be something. I don't know. There's something embedded in me with some of this Vader stuff that because and it's the fulfillment of having Hayden Christensen actually don the suit for more than a couple scenes in
Yeah.
Revenge of the
Yeah.
Sith. It's kind of what he not necessarily signed up for, but it's probably like again a wish fulfillment of this character, where you get to play the character through leading to what his inevitability is, and you finally actually get to play that character, and he is rocking it when he's in the suit. During the small little dialogue scenes that he has with Riva and the hologram. But let's fast forward to the village scene. Like
Yeah.
that is it was like Michael Myers like horror film, just incarnate with Vader, and seeing the Inquisitors just kind of cower in the corner while he's coming
Yeah.
in, just fantastic all around. I mean, and I think it was even in Star Wars Celebration over in Europe this year, where Deborah Chow stated that this was her favorite scene to shoot. So, just all around great stuff. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this scene is unsettling to say the least, right? I mean, Vader shows up, Obi-Wan senses him before he even arrives, right? And this is another one of those spots where it's like his reaction is, like you said, over the top, but it's because he's just like he's overwhelmed by the darkness, right?
Right.
And then Vader comes around the corner and just starts like that first one. He like pulls the guy basically like out of the window,
Yep.
choking him just to get Obi-Wan to come out, right? Like Vader like he looks right at him. He looks right at Obi-Wan. He knows that he's there. And he's just basically like, "Come on. Like I'm going to keep doing this until
Mhm.
you come out." And the kid comes out to like help his dad or whatever, and Vader just snaps the kid's neck
because
and
it's a
and
kid.
the
It's Vader.
yeah, and the old man is dead, and the wife is just like weeping there, and then he just grabs another person and just drags this woman across the ground, right? Like he just and he's just causing pain and suffering in order to more or less like it's similar to what the Grand Inquisitor was saying in the
Right.
first episode of like it's an itch that they can't help but scratch, right? Like he's trying to force Obi-Wan into doing the right thing because he thinks he knows Obi-Wan, but what he underestimates is just how broken Obi-Wan is at this point, that Obi-Wan just lets this happen. Which like that Vader murdering people is not unsettling to me. I am absolutely desensitized to that, right? Like that's his whole deal. I've actually even played as him and done the murdering, right? Of 100 Wookiees in Force Unleashed, right? Like no big deal. It
Hmm.
is Obi-Wan reacting but not doing anything about it. That is what's unsettling, because in this moment we need a hero, we need a Jedi Knight, and there isn't one to be found. When Obi-Wan said to Bail, "I'm not the man that I used to be. Like get somebody else. I can't do this." He wasn't lying, right? He is not in a state to confront Vader. And so he does do the right thing eventually, and is like, I'm going to draw him off because the important thing here is Leia getting back to safety.
Right.
Um but but he also is like, he's not going to confront Vader. He's going to lead them away, right? He's going to lead Vader and the Inquisitors away, or at least he thinks he will. And so he runs, and eventually Vader catches up to him. I love it when
Yeah.
Vader ignites the lightsaber,
Oh,
and
so good.
Obi-Wan just stands there and like thinks about it and then just runs. And he just runs. Just again, he's just overcome by fear. And this is so the opposite of who we know Obi-Wan Kenobi to be from everything that we've seen in the Clone Wars and the prequels, of like, like General Grievous is standing in front of you, jump down and fight him. Right? Like, but instead, here's Vader, and he can't bring himself to fight this being in front of him.
It's overwhelming. He not only did he just find out that Anakin is still alive, but now
Mm-hmm.
he's here. He's doing these horrible things. He's witnessing them for the first time, and he is in shock. He cannot do anything. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where it's just the inaction is what is unsettling. Real quick, going back slightly, I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I noticed it the first time I really noticed it was this time, but I think this is the best use of the story point of Vader's breathing, where
Hmm.
he walks into the marketplace, he's menacing, standard Vader breathing. When he notices something over the left, and he stops, the music is silent, the breathing is silent, everything is silent. But then uh, when Obi-Wan kind of has a shallow breath, you don't hear an inhale from Vader, you hear a slight exhale, and he is in 100% control of the situation.
Hmm.
And it's just fascinating to me. The first time I actually like realized that this during this rewatch, I'm like, that is a solid use of a trope that we've had for 46 years, of this menacing figure that looks like just a dark triangle that has this menacing breathing. And it's a fantastic way of kind of interpreting that story, almost a trope at this point, for a new audience, a new show, and just using it very effectively. I felt. Did you notice that?
No, I've never really cued in on that specifically, like on the breathing thing. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'll have to go back and revisit it.
it's very subtle, but there's just this moment
Mhm.
where it's just dead silence in the entire marketplace. And then when
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, out of fear, just is breathing, you just hear this, and then it cuts back to Vader, and it's just a slight exhale, just, and then that's when he starts force pulling the dude out of the window, and it's
Mm.
just like, now I know you're here. Now here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely like that moment that is clear to me, of like that moment when it's like he recognizes, like he feels in the same way that Obi-Wan senses Vader, like Vader senses him, right? Which
Totally.
obviously, I mean, like we know that they can do that based on A New Hope, and he's like, it's a presence I've not felt since, right? And
Hmm.
so yeah, it's like this instant recognition, and then the goading, right? I love going back to their confrontation in the mine. Um, I and when Vader then like starts talking to him, right? And he reacts and he ignites his lightsaber, not to defend himself or to fight, but just out of like sheer like fear, just totally out
Yeah.
of fear.
Hmm.
And the way the lightsaber just like snaps, like it hisses to life in such an aggressive way, which is not typical for like what we assume with what we not assume what we sort of like I have come to know with Obi-Wan when he turns his lightsaber on, right? Like it's
Hmm.
usually a lot more methodical feeling. um but this is just like he is just reacting, he's just purely reacting, and Vader just houses him so
Oh yeah.
hard. Like Obi-Wan doesn't stand a chance here. But we have to, I remember people watching this episode and a bunch of people complaining. Like this, the first two episodes everybody thought was great. And then this was the episode where a bunch of people started having problems with the show. And this like, but he doesn't, Obi-Wan's better than that. And it's like, you're missing the point of this story. The Obi-Wan you knew was better than that for sure, 100%. This is not that man. He has gone through some stuff and he hasn't ignited his lightsaber, right? Like since until the beginning of this situation, right?
Hmm.
Like this stuff with Leia. He hasn't like that, he buried them in the dirt, you guys. Like he did not use his lightsaber for 10 years. You expect that he's just like good to go. There's a reason why the Jedi train constantly, right? Like, and it's to be ready for this moment. I can't remember what story it is, but there is a story about Obi-Wan training with a lightsaber, like a young Obi-Wan. And like there's like a line or two about I don't even know why we do this sort of thing. It's like the Sith are gone, right? This is like before Maul has revealed that the Sith have been there the whole time, right? Like this is like a few years before Phantom Menace sort of thing, like when Obi-Wan's a teenager. And I wish I could remember what story this is from, but it's
Jedi
sort of like
Apprentice,
this.
maybe.
It might be from one of the Apprentice books, yeah. I but I It was basically like it was getting at the idea that like when Qui-Gon fights Maul on Tatooine, the fact that he survives that encounter is amazing because no one has fought with a lightsaber in an actual life or death situation in like 1,000 years, right? Like it's been a very long time since the Sith disappeared, as far as we know, right? Acolyte's about to rewrite that history, so
Yeah.
we'll find out that it was a couple hundred years ago or
Still a
whatever,
couple
but
lifetimes though. Still, it's still a
yeah,
long time.
exactly. Like Qui-Gon has certainly never fought anybody lightsaber to lightsaber. I'm sure he had been in like hand to hand combat fights with a lightsaber against other weapons, but in most instances, a lightsaber beats out anything else. Right? Right? It's like rock paper scissors. It doesn't matter. I have a lightsaber. Um,
Nice.
but I yeah, it's like but there are other stories as well that talk about like their training. They train their body to control their mind, sort of thing. Like that's a part of it. And Obi-Wan has stopped all of that, right? It's like similar to like a Shaolin monk sort of ideology, right? Of like in order to be in full control of your mind and your soul, you also have to be in control of your body, right?
Mhm.
In order to be in control of your body, like the best way to do that is physicality, and martial arts is a good way to accomplish that. So you train in these martial arts not with the intent of being lethal, but with the intent of being in absolute control of your body, your mind, and your spirit, right? And in that instance, like your key, right, which is the same as the force.
Right.
um and so Obi-Wan is not in control of any of that. He's not in control of his mind. We've seen that throughout this episode. He's not in control of his body. He is not in control of his spirit. It is all escaping him at this point in the story, right? And it'll be in the next episode. Is it the next one is when they go to the fortress, right? The fourth
Right.
episode? Yeah. Um that's where he finds that again, right? And we get that moment. We get the moment in the tunnel, in the Fortress Inquisitorius, that we see it. We see Obi-Wan start to come back. Like we see the Obi-Wan Kenobi surface inside of Ben. And that's the other part of it, is that he literally takes a different name because he's no longer that man, and he is still Ben. He says that moments before these scenes, right? He says to
Right.
Talos, like, it's Ben these days, right? Because she's like, I can't
Yeah.
imagine Obi-Wan Kenobi being afraid of anything, sort of thing. And he's like, well, I'm not Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And then we get the whole situation of Vader with the fire, and like, I'm gonna make you suffer like you made me suffer. And it's like, and he attempts to recreate the scenario, but like, he's this is where Vader fails in dealing with Obi-Wan, is that, like, instead of killing Obi-Wan, his plan is to make this a long, painful suffering.
Right.
So he doesn't want to kill him right away, which then leads to, gives Ned B the opportunity, and Tala the opportunity to rescue him. But not without doing some serious damage to Obi-Wan first. But this is what has to happen, right? He has to hit this low in order to rise up, right? It has to happen. But yeah, like, so in all of this, Leia and Obi-Wan have become separated, right? She's gone off with Tala, and then Tala has left Leia, and the Force, for some reason, is guiding Riva towards Leia. Like Riva figures out where the safe house is just by sort of vibes, right? Well, I mean, she's a Jedi, so makes sense. But we basically end the episode with Leia in the clutches of Riva, right? Like, that's kind of where we're at.
Right.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say before we kind of wrap it up?
Amazing fight. I love how one-sided it was, completely. It also has some moments where they kind of set up some moments that we'll see. It's kind of like a flashback, flash forward type of thing, which we'll see in, I think, part 5 come to fruition. One of my favorite things about this episode is, again, going back to that first saber ignition with Kenobi, and how he was so out of fear when he ignited it. It wasn't glorified. It wasn't heroic. It was just completely out of fear. One of my favorite moments about that was that it was almost like, even because he was completely, obviously, in the darkness, emotionally and visually. Yeah, he's literally in the darkness, and it's almost as if in this moment he ignites his lightsaber out of fear, and even the light is betraying him, because there are these moments where it's almost that reversed situation where, if, like, say you want to turn off all the lights in the house to make sure that it's safe outside the house, it's almost like the reverse, where if you had the lights on, everyone can see you from the outside, kind of that thing, where from the lightsaber's perspective, he has the lightsaber to light his path to see if Vader's out there, but even the light is betraying him because it's so dark that it's just showing where he's at, so Vader could catch him, and he can't even see past his lightsaber because it's so dark and the lightsaber is so light. So I really like how that was shot, particularly. But those are really my thoughts at the end. Overall, fantastic episode. Is definitely my favorite of the first three, and I can't wait to move forward. We could probably talk about this moving forward in the future episodes, but I love how these episodes kind of they're kind of this, story wise, they kind of follow the same beats, or visually, emotionally, of the original 6 films, where this is kind of the prequel trilogy in 3 episodes, where we have the beginning, the introduction, and the with the characters, and the kind of the hero's journey kind of begins. The second episode kind of takes place in a very similar kind of aesthetic as Attack of the Clones and Coruscant, and this episode in particular. And moving forward, it happens again, but in this episode in particular, where we have a fight, there's fire involved. One of our characters is getting burned, and there's other moments like that, but just overall, just really digging the series, and this is definitely my favorite of the first 3.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like I've said multiple times, right? This is where it really starts to ramp up. This is where it gets interesting. Everything else has kind of just been set up, and then these next 2 episodes, I think, are the strongest. And I mean, like, it's easy to say that the final episode is the best one because it's got the cool lightsaber fight. But for me, it's like none of that matters. Like, that's the thing, is that like that lightsaber fight is inconsequential and does not hit as hard as it needs to if you haven't done your homework in this episode and the next one. Right, like that's what it comes down to for me. And then the 5th episode is really like Reva's episode, right? So yeah, it's a little bit of a different thing, but anyways, we'll talk more about that when we get to it. We are taking next week off, correct? That's the
Yes.
plan. Yeah, so we're taking next week off, and then we'll be back the week after that to talk about part 4. And yeah, and then it'll be 4, 5, and 6, those 3 weeks in a row. And we'll be that much closer. I mean, like that'll pretty much bring us into what, like the beginning of July, right? So if we're
For sure.
or like mid-July almost, kind of thing, right? Like
For sure.
the 10th will be the last time that we record. So we will be we'll be like within striking distance of Ahsoka, which got its premiere date, which is August. Is it August 21st or 23rd? I can't remember. It's later in August. I know that. Let me bring it up on the IMDb, and I'll tell you guys when that first episode drops. But yeah,
August 23rd.
Is it August 23rd? I wasn't sure if it was the 23rd because it's 2023, right? So I was like, okay.
Yeah, 23. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, man, we're getting real close to Ahsoka. It's exciting. It's been nice revisiting Obi-Wan these last 3 weeks, and I'm looking forward to the back half of the season. Yeah, it's been a good time. I'm glad that we're doing this. Sometimes podcasting can be a little bit of like, oh, I got a podcast again tonight. When I'd really rather just play video games. I'm so close to finishing Tears of the Kingdom, you guys. And then once I'm done that, then I can focus on Diablo 4, which I already bought and have like started, but haven't really been able to get into because I keep going like, but I only got a couple of shrines left. Now I have all of the shrines in Tears of the Kingdom. Actually, I am basically done. I just need to go kill Ganondorf, but that's what I would rather be doing most of the time. But then I was like, ooh, I get to watch Obi-Wan and talk about it with Marty tonight. So yeah, that's exciting. But next week we'll be off. In the meantime, if you are not a supporter on Patreon, this episode will come out on Tuesday. If you're listening to this, it's come out on Tuesday. This Friday, we've got a brand new episode of Perfect 10. So head over to that podcast feed and make sure you're subscribed, because we are talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is the first time that I've actually like said out loud what the next episode is. But Cheryl Bell, who I met last year at Star Wars Celebration, was a friend of Marie Claire, is a mutual friend of ours, and we became friends over the course of the weekend at Celebration. So she's come on. She is like, I think, the biggest indie fan that I know. Like, she is the biggest fan of Indiana Jones. So I say all that to say like in the week that you guys have off, you can listen to me and Cheryl talk about indie for like, I think almost 2 hours. So that's fun. And if you want to, you can go back and you can listen to Marty and I talk about T2 from a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that was fun.
If you haven't listened to that one yet.
Did you record the Raiders of the Lost Ark episode already?
Oh yeah, we recorded it. Yeah, we recorded it last week. So it'll, as a matter of fact, when I'm done recording with you, I have to finish editing it so that I can post it for Patreon, because everybody on Patreon gets it tonight. They get it around midnight tonight. So patreon.com/thunderquack if you want to get early access on that one. Yeah, so that's going on, and I think that's pretty much it. We just kind of got that. I think maybe after we are done with Obi-Wan on Force Perspectives, that I will jump back to Rebel Cells, and we'll do a couple episodes covering Star Wars Visions, and then Young Jedi Adventures, because those are two things that have happened in Star Wars animation in the last little bit that I said that we would cover, and it's just, one thing at a time. So I look forward to that, and like that'll bring us right to Ahsoka. Basically, I think like if I look at the schedule, it's like that'll get us pretty much there. So look forward to all of that content coming soon, or maybe possibly already out. I mean, it's a podcast, so you could be listening to this 2 years after we recorded it. As a matter of fact, like, well, why wouldn't you be? We're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi a year after it aired, so it's not like any of this is timely anyways. So if you're in the future, thanks. Do we have jetpacks yet?
How's Star Wars Outlaws?
How is Star Wars Outlaw? Does Elon Musk still own Twitter? Is Trump in jail yet? These are the questions that I want to know. The jetpack one is the most important, though. Priorities, guys. Anyways, that's it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. This is a doozy of an episode. This is a long one. but we did also talk at length about Rise of Skywalker and the Fast and the Furious for some reason. So it is what it is. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Marty, for hanging out and talking about all of this ridiculous stuff with me. And we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about part 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. See you then.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.